Good morning students. This is Murari Daman. I am here to discussing about Neet zoology. In Neet zoology, today I am going to discuss about central nervous system. Central nervous system made up of two parts. Brain and spinal cord. Brain also considered as the think tank of the body. And brain also considered as central commanding system of the body. Central commanding system of the body. It may have 100 billions of neurons. 100 billions of neurons. Brain is located inside the bony box-like structure that is called cranium. And around the brain, there are three membranes are present, such as the outer membrane is called dura mater, middle membrane is called arachnoid membrane, and third membrane is called pia mater. Brain is surrounded by three layers around it, such as dura mater, arachnoid membrane and pia mater, and these three layers together called dura mater, arachnoid membrane, pia mater. These three layers together called meninges. These three layers together called meninges. This is the outer layer. Outer layer. It is dura mater. And this is the middle layer. It is the web-like layer. This is arachnoid membrane. Arachnoid membrane. And inner layer is called pia mater. This is the pia mater. This is the pia mater. Around the brain, there are three layers are present. Upper one is called dura mater. Middle one is called web-like layer, that is called arachnoid membrane. And inner one is called pia mater. And these three membranes together called meninges. These layers together called meninges. Between the dura mater and arachnoid membrane, some space is present. Here, this is the space. The space present between the dura mater and arachnoid membrane, that is called subdural space. Subdural space. And another kind of space, it is also present between the arachnoid membrane and pia mater. This is called subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space. There is a fluid is present in the two spaces. The space present between the dura mater and arachnoid membrane, that is called subdural space, and the space present between the arachnoid membrane and pia mater, that is called subarachnoid space. And these two spaces filled with the fluid, and especially the fluid present inside the subdural space, that fluid is called interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. interstitial fluid. And the fluid present inside the subarachnoid space, that is called cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. Okay? Cerebrospinal fluid. The fluid present inside the subdural space, that is called interstitial fluid. And the fluid present inside the subarachnoid space, that is called cerebrospinal fluid, in short form CSF. Cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid, it is an alkaline fluid. It is a alkaline fluid. And it is recycled 4 times per day. It is recycled 4 times. It is recycled 4 times per day. And what is the main function of cerebrospinal fluid? This cerebrospinal fluid, it supplies the nutrients to the brain tissue, and while it is coming back, and it carries the nitrogenous waste materials from the brain tissue. It supplies the nutrients. It supplies the nutrients to the brain tissue, while going. And while coming back, it carries nitrogenous waste. It carries nitrogenous waste material from the brain tissue into outside. That is the main function of the cerebrospinal fluid. Brain can be divided into 3 parts, such as forebrain, second one midbrain, third one hindbrain. Forebrain also called as prosencephalon, and midbrain also called mesencephalon, and hindbrain also known as rhombencephalon. The brain can be divided into 3 regions, such as forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Forebrain also called prosencephalon, midbrain also called mesencephalon, hindbrain also called rhombencephalon, and in each of these parts again consists of, there are different kinds of parts in them. Such as, for example, the forebrain. The parts present inside the forebrain are forebrain having, there are different parts, such as, one is olfactory lobes, and the second one is cerebrum, and the third one is called diencephalon. Forebrain having the three parts, such as olfactory lobes, cerebrum, diencephalon, and again diencephalon, it has 3 regions, such as epithalamus, thalamus, hypothalamus. Forebrain have three regions. Forebrain have 3 parts, such as olfactory lobes, cerebrum, diencephalon, and again diencephalon has 3 parts, such as epithalamus, thalamus, hypothalamus. The first part of the forebrain, that is cerebrum. So first part of the forebrain, that is called olfactory lobes. Olfactory lobes are the club-shaped structures, and these are the, how many olfactory lobes present inside the forebrain? There are one pair of olfactory lobes present inside the forebrain, and these are the club-shaped structures, and they help in sense of smell. They help in sense of smell. The first one is called olfactory lobes. Olfactory lobes. Olfactory lobes. These are one pair. These are club-shaped structures. These are club-shaped structures, and they help in sense of smell. They help in sense of smell. Second part, cerebrum. Cerebrum. And cerebrum is, this is the largest part of the brain. This is the largest part of the brain. And all the synthetic activities inside the nervous system, that takes place inside the cerebrum. All synthetic activities. All synthetic activities take place in cerebrum. Cerebrum. And a longitudinal fissure divides the first, the surface of the forebrain, especially the surface of the cerebrum. Surface of the cerebrum is called cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. On the middle part of the cerebral cortex, a longitudinal fissure. A longitudinal fissure is present that divides the cerebrum into two equal halves. This is the longitudinal fissure. This is the longitudinal fissure. See children, this is the longitudinal fissure. It divides the cerebrum into two equal halves. These two equal halves of 1, 2. These two equal halves of cerebrum are called cerebral hemispheres. Cerebral hemispheres. Cerebral hemispheres. Right and left cerebral hemispheres. And again, each cerebral hemisphere, it can be divided into 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, another cerebral hemisphere also. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, these 4 parts present in the each cerebral hemisphere are, the first one, frontal lobe, and the second one, parietal lobe, and the third one, temporal lobe. Temporal lobe, and the fourth one, occipital lobe. And each cerebral hemisphere, they can be divided into 4 lobes. First one, frontal lobe, second one, parietal lobe, third one, occipital lobe. The first one, frontal lobe, second one, parietal lobe, third one, temporal lobe, fourth one, occipital lobe. Okay? Cerebrum is the largest structure of the brain. Cerebrum is the site of synthetic activities inside the nervous system. And the cerebrum, upper surface of the cerebrum is called cerebral cortex. And a longitudinal fissure which is present at the middle part of the cerebrum that divides the cerebrum into 2 equal halves, and these 2 equal halves of the cerebrum are called cerebral hemispheres. Some groove-like structures present in the each cerebral hemisphere And these grooves, they can divide each cerebral hemispheres into 4 lobes. And the first lobe is called frontal lobe, second lobe is called parietal lobe, third one is called temporal lobe, fourth one is the occipital lobe. Fourth one is the first one, frontal lobe. Frontal lobe. And the functioning of the frontal lobe, and it helps in the analyzing the information regarding to the thinking, reasoning, intelligence, and memory. So the frontal lobe of the cerebral hemisphere, it helps in analyzing the information about thinking, reasoning, intelligence, and memory, and the responses regarding to all these activities, they are analyzed inside the frontal lobe of the cerebral hemisphere, and the response is also produced here. Parietal lobe. Parietal lobe, it helps in analyzing the information of language interpretation, and all the information about the language that is analyzed inside the parietal lobe, and it is also produce the responses regarding to the language activities. Language interpretation. Language interpretation. So the language interpretation, it was done inside the parietal lobe of the cerebral hemisphere, and that means the information about the language that is received by the parietal lobe of the cerebral hemisphere, that is analyzed here, and the response also produced here regarding to the language activity. The temporal lobe, it helps in analyzing the information auditory interpretation. Auditory interpretation. Auditory. It helps in auditory interpretation. Auditory interpretation. That means it helps in receiving the information about the sound, analyzing the information about the sound, and produce the responses about the sound activities. So that is the functioning of the temporal lobe. And the final lobe, that is called occipital lobe. And the occipital lobe, this occipital lobe, it helps in analyzing the information about the visual interpretation. Visual interpretation. Visual interpretation was done here. Visual interpretation happening inside the fourth lobe of the cerebral hemisphere, that is called occipital lobe.